Hi, everyone. Welcome. It is Sarah Haas here with the Boss Body Podcast. And if you are new to the podcast, welcome. It is so great to have you. And if you are one of my regular listeners, thank you for sticking with me. It's really good to have you back. Today, I am covering a topic that I know is going to resonate with so many of you. And we're talking all about fat. We're going to learn how to teach our bodies to burn off that fat that we have been carrying so long by turning our bodies into a fat burning machine. Sounds good, right? Before I dive into that, I need to clear up one misconception about fat, and that is that eating fat is what causes you to be fat. And that's old school thinking. The new science has disproven that. So we have to get it out of our heads that eating a low-fat diet is the way to lose weight. Because the problem with that is when you go for a food that's labeled low-fat, what they've had to do in order to make up for all the flavor that we lost by taking out that delicious fat is adding sugar. And sugar is what makes us fat, not fat. Now, we don't want to go overboard with fat, obviously, with bacon and butter and all those good things. We want to stick more toward the healthy fats like olive oil and fish. However, let's get rid of looking for those low-fat items like low-fat salad dressing. If you start reading those labels, you're going to see that they have jacked up the amount of sugar that is contained in there. And that's what I'm going to talk to you about today, is that if you're carrying extra weight or if you are exercising and you're not seeing the results you want, you're probably eating too much sugar and flour and processed carbohydrates. So way back in the 80s, the FDA came out with their recommendations. Remember that food pyramid? And at the bottom of the pyramid, which was supposed to be the base of what we were supposed to be eating the most of in our diets, was grains and bread. And I think it recommended we should eat like 5 to 7 servings of these grains every single day. But let me tell you a little bit about that. The committee that they put together to come up with these recommendations was made up of all different people from different sectors. But guess who was one of the people on the committee? Grain farmers. And also, guess who was sponsoring the meetings when they all got together to discuss coming up with the recommendations? The grain farmers. So they were serving lots of bread, and it's no coincidence that the recommendations that came out said we should eat lots and lots of bread. So that is where one of those big misconceptions came from. And the fact is, we should be cutting down on those simple carbohydrates / sugar / grains / flour. So when I talk today, you're going to hear me say a lot about sugar, and really I'm using that term interchangeably with white processed flour, processed grains, any kind of processed unhealthy carbohydrates. So let me explain what I mean about that. There are complex carbohydrates and there are simple carbohydrates. Simple carbohydrates are the processed carbohydrates that have gone through a process in order to remove the fiber. So, for example, white flour. White flour went through a process where they took out all the fiber, which was the dark part. So instead of it being a whole wheat now, it's a white flour. And the reason they started doing that is because they realized that the fiber is what was causing the foods to go bad. So did you ever notice that if you had a loaf of homemade bread, that would go moldy if you sat it out for a few days? And if you have a loaf of white bread, it can sit there for months and months without going bad. So the food industry realized this, and they thought, hey, if we take out all that fiber, our food can sit on the shelf for so much longer without going bad, and we're going to make a whole lot more money. And that was the bottom line. And anything that has been processed to that point where they took the fiber out is going to absorb super quickly into our bloodstreams and turn immediately to glucose, which is sugar. So white flour, white rice, any of those super processed foods are basically sugar. So muffins are pretty much the same thing as eating a cupcake. So when you eat those things, white bread, white rice, you're basically eating sugar. And what happens is you eat the processed carbohydrate. It doesn't have any fiber to slow down the absorption into your blood. So you have this glucose immediately in your bloodstream. And when glucose is high, insulin spikes. And insulin is the fat storage hormone. So the more insulin we have, the more fat we have. So that is why we want to stay away as much as possible from all these processed carbohydrates / sugar if we're trying to lose fat. We are so accustomed to eating so much of those processed carbohydrates. And when we eat so much sugar and so much flour and so much carbohydrates, our body is barely able to keep up. Your body needs to burn something for energy, and it's going to look for the quickest, easiest source, the most readily available fuel. And if you're eating a lot of sugar and a lot of carbohydrates, that's the most readily available, and that is exactly where your body is going to go to burn for energy. And so if you have fat that you're wanting to burn, your body's never getting to that. No matter how much you're exercising, if you're putting all those sugar and processed carbs into your body's going to continue burning that instead of the fat. The bottom line is when you eat sugar, you spike your insulin. When you spike your insulin, you store fat. And also, if you are eating a lot of sugar, your body is doing all it can just to burn off the sugar that you keep bombarding yourself with, and it never is going to start cutting into those fat stored reserves on your body, so you're not going to be able to lose weight. I do want to make one thing clear, and that is that I am not a proponent of the keto or no carb or low carb way of eating for several reasons. One is that you do need some carbohydrates in order to have a balanced, healthy diet, but you want them to be complex carbohydrates like fruits and sweet potatoes. So there are a lot of good carbohydrates. What I'm talking about cutting out is the processed carbohydrates. You'll see a lot of people out there who have gone keto or gone low carb or no carb, and you will see that they have lost weight. But it's not really because they have cut out carbs altogether. It's most likely that they were way overeating the processed carbs, and just by getting rid of those, they're losing the weight. So I don't want you to get confused and think that I'm saying carbs are bad, don't eat carbs. It's all about the kind of carbs you're eating and the quantities. In America, we have gone carbohydrate crazy. We're eating pasta, we're eating bread, we're eating French fries and potato chips and cereal. So there's so much of those processed carbs out there, and it seems like meal after meal. We're eating bread as a side dish, bread with pasta and dessert. And it's just making up way too big of a portion of our diet. So all I'm saying is come into more of a healthy, balanced way of eating and focus on those complex carbohydrates, and your body is going to respond by tapping into those fat reserves and starting to use that to burn for energy. And that is the key to getting the fat off. So a quick review. Number 1, eating fat is not what makes you fat. Eating too much sugar, white flour, processed carbohydrates is what leads you to fat storage. So the more sugar you're eating, the more your body is using that as its source of fuel instead of burning fat. So if you want to increase your metabolism, if you want to lose weight, if you want to start burning off those fat stores, get away from the sugar and the processed carbohydrates, and I promise you are going to start seeing results. I hope this was helpful for you. I can't wait for you to try it, and I can't wait to hear what a difference it makes for you. That's all I have for today. Thank you so much for being here, and I will see you next time.